copy of Ghost of Tsushima for this review was provided by PlayStation. Ghost of Tsushima has long been one of my most anticipated PlayStation 4 games. When it was revealed back in 2017, I was optimistic despite not knowing much about it. The open world setting, characters, and feudal Japanese theme seemed like something I would enjoy. I was a big fan of Infamous Second Son, and I was hopeful Sucker Punch's PS4 Swan song would be similarly enjoyable. Ghost of Tsushima sees you take on the role of Jin Sakai, a samurai born to a noble clan and looked after by his uncle following his father's death. When the island of Tsushima is invaded by Mongols and his uncle is captured, Jin sets out on a quest to free both his family and his island from the invaders. Tsushima is actually a real place, and Mongols did in fact invade it in the late 13th century. The main character Jin and the villain Khotun Khan are both fictional, but the backdrop is based on real events, somewhat similar to the Assassin's Creed series. That thematic similarity is fitting too, because Ghost of Tsushima feels a lot like an older Assassin's Creed game in a number of ways. Well, it feels like Assassin's Creed mixed with a hint of Breath of the Wild, which I'll explain more in a bit. For now, let's focus on the former. There are essentially two ways to approach encounters in this game, as a samurai and as a ghost. Choosing to tackle objectives as a samurai means challenging foes head-on, regardless of the odds. When you approach a group of enemies, you can call them out for a standoff. The standoff mechanic is easily my favorite in all of Ghost of Tsushima. You square up against an enemy or a group of enemies and wait for them to make a move. When they do, you can strike, taking them down in a single slash. I found myself trying my hardest not to blink out of fear that I'd miss my opportunity. The suspense in these moments kept me on edge, and I couldn't get enough. Every time I encounter enemies in the wild, I choose to initiate a showdown even if it leaves me outnumbered. They're just too much fun to pass up. So the samurai approach is both figuratively and literally straightforward, but what about playing as the ghost? Well, it's essentially playing stealthily, and it feels a lot like an old-school Assassin's Creed game. If you like those games as I do, this is an incredibly good thing. Enemy AI isn't as smart or scary as those found in games like The Last of Us Part 2, but I think that works for them here. It helps sell the idea that Jin Sakai is a cut above the rank-and-file soldiers in the Mongolian invasion force. If you choose to take the stealthy route, you'll spend a lot of time hiding in tall white flowers and taking out foes from the shadows. You can lure enemies to you with a wind chime or hide atop a tent or tower to take them out with a single strike. If you get caught, you can use smoke bombs to create a diversion and hide while you wait for them to return to their routines. I often preferred a mix of the two styles. Assassination has its tactical benefits, but some of the enemy encampments you come across are huge and would take a very long time to clear out stealthily. Most of the time, I'd pick off as many enemies as I can with stealth, then challenge the remainder directly. This choice is mostly an illusion, however, as some missions will require you not to be seen, while others will throw you into the fray against a number of opponents already aware that you're attacking. Regardless of the style you choose, the story places you squarely in one of those roles. I would have loved for Sucker Punch to have given us the ability to change the narrative based on our actions in-game, but unfortunately, that isn't the case. The best missions culminate in a duel against a single opponent, which feels appropriately epic. Each duel starts off like one straight out of a samurai film, with Jin sharing a brief conversation with his opponent before the camera pulls in close and you battle. Swordplay in Ghost of Tsushima is engaging. There's a rhythm to the fights in this game that I simply can't get enough of. The feeling of reading and parrying an opponent's attack to lay some punishment on them was incredibly satisfying, though it wasn't without issues. The camera would sometimes get in the way of my enjoyment during fights. If I was fighting in close quarters, sometimes it would get stuck on a wall or hide an enemy just out of view, leading to me getting hit by someone I didn't even know was there. I eventually worked around this by leading my opponents out to more open areas, but the lack of a lock-on function and the wonky camera sometimes made things more difficult than it needed to be, to say nothing of when I would mess things up on my own by not using the correct stance, for instance. Speaking of which, you have 4 different sword stances at your disposal, each of which is adept at dealing with a specific enemy type, and if you want to succeed later in the game, you'll need to learn how to switch between them quickly. Thankfully, each stance has a button shortcut assigned to it, and if you can't remember which is good against the enemy you're fighting, the game will occasionally pop up reminders if it detects that you're having trouble. Each stance has a number of skills you can unlock for it. There are actually several different skill trees available for you to fill out in the game. There's one dedicated to your various sword skills, one for your skills as a ghost, and one for samurai skills. On top of these, there are also exploration-based skills that will help you find specific types of items or locations scattered around Tsushima, and mythic skills which require you to complete a quest line to obtain. For everything but the mythic skills, you'll need technique points, which you earn by completing quests or killing Mongols you find around the island accosting your countrymen. When I first started playing, I was concerned I wouldn't have enough technique points to fill out my skill trees, but by the end of the game, around 30 hours later, I found that I had all the skills I wanted and then some. Earlier I mentioned there was another game that I feel heavily influenced Ghost of Tsushima, and that is, surprisingly, Breath of the Wild. The first hour or so of Ghost of Tsushima is a guided experience, taking you through the two distinct playstyles of Samurai and Ghost, but after you're through with those, the island is essentially opened up to you. You have a larger quest to defeat the Khan and missions given to you in a specific order, but you can choose to continue your story or seek out and complete side quests. Aesthetically, Breath of the Wild seems to have some influence on the game as well. The island of Tsushima is covered in tall grass and flowers, lending it some of that Zelda feel even without the cel-shaded look. This is especially true when you're riding your horse across the island. There's also a heavy emphasis on climbing in Ghost of Tsushima, though it doesn't feel nearly as natural as Breath of the Wild's climbing mechanic. Link could climb just about anything in Nintendo's 2017 opus, where you're limited in Ghost of Tsushima. Spots you can climb are easily identifiable by discoloration around the surfaces, making it easy to tell, which again feels like a trait borrowed from older Assassin's Creed games. You can learn various songs to play on your shakuhachi, which have effects on the time of day or weather, borrowing less from Breath of the Wild, but more from the Zelda series in general. That isn't to say Ghost of Tsushima is just a mashup of two games I love, however. The setting and story help to create a game that, while mechanically similar to those two series, feels like something all its own. Let's start with the setting. The island of Tsushima is massive. There are small secrets and encounters scattered all throughout each of its 3 areas. Each area has a handful of story quests you can work your way through fairly quickly if that's what you'd like to do, but they're absolutely packed with side quests, enemy camps, shrines, fox dens, and other stuff to explore, all of which serve a purpose. You'll also encounter enemies at random points all throughout your travels, which will randomly spawn just about anywhere on the island to keep you on your toes. I would almost always engage them on my way to my next objective. Initially, I focused on the story quests, figuring I'd go back through and clean up side content after I'd finished the game, and I think that's the wrong way to do things. Charging through the main questline left me too weak to fight the enemies I was facing. Each character you meet and befriend throughout your quest has their own questline you can follow, which often rewards you with items and materials. Those materials are important, as you'll need to upgrade your gear if you want to stand a chance against the Mongols later in the game. As you liberate portions of the island, you'll gain access to armorers, blacksmiths, bowyers, and trappers who can help you upgrade your gear and keep you in the fight. For instance, if you want to focus on stealth, you can upgrade Jean's Tonto, which will make your assassinations go faster, decreasing the chance you'll be noticed. There are several different sets of armor as well, all of which specialize in different areas, like an archery-based armor that improves your ability to aim as well as concentrate, which briefly slows time, allowing you to line up better shots. There's also samurai armor, which will allow you to take on more enemies in a standoff, or stealth-focused armor. As of this writing, I'm missing a few sets, but I'm still looking for them. There are even mythic quests that reward you with armor sets, giving you tons of customization options based on your favorite playstyle. You'll also want to look for shrines and fox dens as well. Shrines are lengthy platforming challenges that will reward you with a charm you can equip. These charms grant you cool abilities, like the ability to terrify opponents into fleeing when you kill someone, or increasing your defense or health. They're handy, but I never found any that I'd deem absolutely essential. If you want to equip as many of them as possible, though, you'll need to locate fox dens. If you see a fox in your travels and you follow it, it will always take you to the nearest fox den, where you can pray in order to unlock a charm slot. You can also locate hot springs to improve your maximum health, and bamboo strikes to add to your maximum resolve. Resolve is one of Ghost of Tsushima's most important resources. You use it to heal yourself in battle, as well as use special techniques like throwing your kunai or sticky bombs, or even using those mythic sword techniques I mentioned earlier. You can never have too much resolve, and I strongly recommend seeking out bamboo strikes whenever possible. With all of this stuff to locate, I loved exploring the island. When you set a waypoint, you can swipe up on the DualShock 4's touchpad to show the guiding wind, a strong gust of wind that guides you in the direction of your objective. I love the way Sucker Punch made navigation feel organic with this mechanic, and I'd love to see more developers take note of this approach. I spent countless hours ignoring the main questline after I had decided to complete side quests to make my life easier, and I'm so glad I did, because some of the best character moments are hiding in those quests. Ghost of Tsushima's main storyline is good enough. Jin's motivations are clear from the onset and don't waver, though his methods evolve. In the beginning, he strictly follows the samurai code of Bushido, fighting foes with honor, and expresses discomfort in assassinating foes, but becomes more pragmatic about the situation the island is in and changes his way of thinking. It serves as a great backdrop for Jin to battle his way across the island, slaughtering Mongols he encounters along his journey. The characters around Jin are by far the most interesting part of the story being told, however. One side quest I played involved Jin's longtime caretaker, someone that had looked after him most of his life and who was ecstatic to see him return to his ancestral home. As you progress through the questline, however, it becomes apparent something is very wrong, and a shocking detail about Jin's childhood is revealed. It was easily the most poignant quest in the game, and one I would have missed entirely if I had stuck to my initial choice to push through the main story only. In fact, most of the side quests in the game are similarly engaging, if not as well written as the one I just mentioned. Because these quests were so good, I ended up spending a lot more time playing Ghost of Tsushima even after I completed it. Some quests become available only after you've completed the main story. A small detail I enjoyed is the fact that NPCs are aware of what has happened in the main quest, even if you're back in the starting portion of the game. At multiple points, people I saved would mention my accomplishments, which I felt was a nice touch and made the world feel alive. You can often hear idle chatter going on in camps all over the island about things you've done, which lends a sense of realism most games tend to miss still. Audio design overall is a strong point. I really enjoyed the sense of directional audio I got even when playing on headphones. When swords would clash in the game, it sounded startlingly realistic. The sound in Ghost of Tsushima adds so much to the feeling and weight of movement. Tall grass or flowers rustling around when skulking through, and you'll even hear the correct sloshing or splashing dependent on whether you're trudging through water or mud. And when you plunge your sword into an opponent, you'll hear, well, gross sounds. It's pretty great. Ghost of Tsushima is a pretty game, albeit not as stunning as the last PS4 exclusive I reviewed in The Last of Us Part 2. Character models are impressively detailed, and the lighting across Tsushima looks pretty great, especially at night. I also found weather effects to be well implemented, but what really drew me in was how impressive Tsushima's vast open fields look when riding across them. Every time I would happen upon a field of flowers as I was riding, I'd take a moment to enjoy the scenery. Most impressive is its incredibly short load times. I played Ghost of Tsushima on PS4 Pro, and fast travel between any two spots on the island, even across any of the 3 areas I mentioned before, only took a few seconds. I'm awestruck by how well fast travel works, and there are tons of locations you can fast travel to. How Sucker Punch managed to make fast travel actually feel fast is beyond me, especially with such an incredible number of points to travel between. There are also video options you can switch between on PS4 Pro. You can choose between quality and frame rate. I stuck with quality for the sake of capturing 4K footage for this review, though I never found Tsushima's frame rate to be an issue. While I didn't analyze it, if I had to guess, Ghost of Tsushima in quality mode sticks around the 30 frames per second mark with few, if any, drops. One of my favorite extras is the inclusion of Kurosawa mode, a black and white, film-grained video filter paired with Japanese language audio and subtitles designed to make Ghost of Tsushima look and feel like an old-school samurai flick. I didn't play most of the game in this mode because I wanted to experience the game in color, though I did choose Japanese audio with subtitles because it felt most thematically appropriate. I tried playing for a little bit with English audio, and while the English voiceover cast did an excellent job, I didn't prefer it. Finally, there's an incredibly powerful photo mode included in Ghost of Tsushima. Pushing right on the D-pad unearths a ton of options you can use to take breathtaking screenshots. You can change the time of day, remove characters, change the speed and direction of the wind, and even select what type of items might be blowing in that wind, like cherry blossoms. It's a really impressive tool, and I'm sure players much more talented than I am will capture some truly stunning screens. I've spent the last couple of weeks playing Ghost of Tsushima, and I have to say, I like it a lot. The main story was thoroughly enjoyable, even if it was eclipsed by its own side quests, and the characters surrounding Jin all have interesting stories to tell. Best of all, the island offers tons of incentive to explore, and it's really fun to do so. I'm still hunting down camps to liberate and quests to finish, and I suspect I'll be doing so for at least a few more days. I would have liked to have the option to choose between the ghost and the samurai, and have the story change with the decisions I make, and the camera can at times detract from the fun of clashing swords with the invading enemy, but I still had a fun time. If you like the setting, don't mind a slower paced action game, and can look past these few issues, I think you'll like Ghost of Tsushima too. That about wraps it up for our review of Ghost of Tsushima on PlayStation 4. As always, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to Game Explained for much more on Ghost of Tsushima and all other things gaming as well. Ring that notification bell to be the first to know each time a new video goes up, and I'll see you next time.